want to miss my conversation with the co-founder of the Greater New York Black Lives Matter group, Hawk Newsome. That and so much more right now on America This Week. As if the upcoming election couldn't be even more chaotic, now Democrats and Republicans are squabbling over whether the president should fulfill his constitutional duty and nominate a Supreme Court justice to fill the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg's seat. It's just the latest in the saga in the swamp, and it'll only get swampier from here. Every 4 years, Americans elect a president on the Tuesday after the first Monday in November. And it seems that each election cycle, the election gods deliver an October surprise, an event nobody saw coming, an event that has tidal wave impact on the imminent presidential election. Some October surprises are natural in their roots, a sudden death or an arrest. Some are more man-made than naturally occurring. In 1972, 12 days before the election, the Nixon administration declared the end of the very unpopular Vietnam War. Needless to say, Nixon won. 8 years later, and just days before the election, challenger Ronald Reagan took credit for getting American hostages released from Iran. Reagan beat incumbent President Jimmy Carter in a landslide. Most political junkies like me credit Reagan's October surprise for the victory. October surprises are a much anticipated event in presidential politics. Obama's previously unknown brother, Romney's Hurricane Sandy, an inopportune audio from a bus, all October surprises. This cycle's October surprise just happened. Yep, just a little bit early. The sudden death of Supreme Court icon Ruth Bader Ginsburg is likely this cycle's October surprise, albeit a late September event. RBG was tiny in stature, but a giant in jurisprudence. Not only was she well-loved among liberal Democrats, Bader Ginsburg was adored as a cultural phenomenon. She became known as Notorious RBG for her hipness, drive, and good nature. Personally, I found her refreshingly honest, completely genuine, and beyond all, she administered her decisions and opinions with a fairness rarely seen in political and legal arenas. Her death was like a huge political football fumbled at the goal line, rolling around with both sides scrambling to take control of the ball. Both sides knowing whoever gains control will likely be the winner of the game, the presidency. Both Democrats and Republicans claim they should have the right to nominate the successor for Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Both teams point a hypocritical finger at each other, though. Just a little more than 4 years ago, Justice Antonin Scalia died suddenly while hunting in Colorado. President Obama immediately nominated Merrick Garland to fill Scalia's seat. The problem for Obama and the Dems was that the Senate was in Republican hands. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and the GOP-led Senate decided against confirming Obama's pick and waited for the incoming President Trump to nominate his pick, Neil Gorsuch, to fill Scalia's seat. The Dems went wild. Joe Biden said that was wrong and that the president had the right to nominate the judge, even if it was in the final days of his presidency.
That I would go forward with the confirmation process as chairman, even a few months before a presidential election, if the nominee were chosen with the advice and not merely the consent of the Senate.
In fairness, Senate Republicans back then said the opposite.
I want you to use my words against me. If there's a Republican president in 2016 and a vacancy occurs in the last year of the first term, you can say, Lindsey Graham said, let's let the next president, whoever it might be, make that nomination, and you could use my words against me, and you'd be absolutely right.
This time around, both sides flipped their positions. McConnell says there will be a confirmation, and Dems are livid. Folks, this is the ugly underbelly of the D.C. swamp. These politicians have short memories. They have no shame flipping on positions they vehemently and aggressively defended just a couple of years ago. It's really ugly, but that's who we elect. Men and women who care more about their re-elections than the good of the country. Speaking of the good of the country, personally, I don't give a rip about the politicians' political aspirations or careers. They'd sell their mothers out for the next donor. In the end, we should stop listening to these charlatans and go to the final decider on all things legal in America. The actual rule book to issues so divisive our elected officials shamelessly contradict their own words. Here's what the Constitution says. The seated president, no matter when, during his presidency, is granted the power to nominate a Supreme Court vacancy replacement. And the Senate, at the time, will confirm or reject the nominee. Period. End of story. That's why every other time in history, and there have been many, the president and his same party has seated this president's nominee in the last year of his presidential term. That's what's happened every time. The president of the same party also held the Senate gavel. The justice has been placed. Only once did it not happen, and that was only due to a last-minute ethics violation by the confirmed nominee. So you see, it doesn't matter who said what 4 years ago or which side are bigger hypocrites. By the way, both sides are giant hypocrites. The only thing that really matters is the law, the Constitution. That means, given the 53-47 GOP majority, the precedent of history and the Constitution, it's highly likely Trump will get his nominee confirmed, and the court will be conservative for a long time. Personally, I believe Trump, being solely responsible for a conservative Supreme Court for the foreseeable future, just won himself 4 more years. And for those of you who love RBG and respect her for being so fair and honest, like me, I leave you with this.
The president is elected for 4 years, not 3 years, so the power that he has in year 3 continues into year 4, and maybe some members of the Senate will wake up and appreciate that that's how it should be.
Thank you, Justice Ginsburg. You are a true American icon. Okay, let's bring in White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany. Kayleigh, 5 months into the new gig, and you've had your hands full. Let's start some of the news of the week. Shocking to me, shocking. Cindy McCain, John McCain's widow, came out in favor of Joe Biden. What does the president think when he hears something like that?
Well, look, if you're advocating for our veterans, for our military heroes, there's a very clear contrast. No one wants to go back to the disastrous Obama days, where under Obama Biden, our Air Force was the smallest it had been. Our Navy was the smallest it had been. Take that and compare that to President Trump, who invested a record amount of money in our military, got our troops a pay raise, and then tragically, look at what happened to our veterans. Under Obama Biden, you have up to 300,000 veterans who died as they had applications pending. That was in an Inspector General report, a real tragedy. Think of that number, 300,000. That's extraordinary. And then you have a president who came in and cleaned up the Obama-Biden mess and fixed the VA and gave access to health care to millions of veterans who needed it.
Kayleigh, tell us what went through, I guess, behind the scenes. Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed on a Friday. There was all over the weekend. Everyone's trying to figure out with Mitt Romney. You know, there was Susan Collins, who was maybe concerning, Lisa Murkowski, who was concerning in Alaska. But Mitt Romney seemed to be the one that everyone was holding their breath. Tell us what was going on behind the scenes to get Mitt Romney to agree to vote for the nominee that President Trump puts forward.
Yeah, it was really Leader McConnell and Senator Lindsey Graham and those who are working in Congress right now to make sure the votes are there. But from our end, we are singularly focused on making sure that the nominee that we pick is extraordinarily qualified, as a textualist, an originalist, someone who has exhibited fidelity to the Constitution, to implementing the plain meaning of statutes, and is there to implement what the law is rather than what they would like it to be, which is what the Democrats tend to do with any of their given appointments.
Kayleigh, you know, you're in the media, you're press secretary, but you've been in the media. Maybe our audience doesn't understand what this means. It's called a full lid. When the president calls it, it means there's no more information coming out of the White House. Oddly, Joe Biden, with 6 weeks left to go before the election, should be out there campaigning, talking. The campaign is called what's called that full lid before noon 8 times in the month of September. What do you think's going on?
That's right. You know, a lid is essentially when you tell the press they can go home because you won't be making any news or public appearances. And, you know, this president, it's very hard to keep up with him here at the White House, all of our staff, because he's in different states every day, sometimes holding as many as 3 or 4 speeches in one day where he's actively engaging with voters. He's routinely taking questions with the press as he boards Air Force One, deplanes from Air Force One. He has another press briefing today. He's truly the most transparent president in history and the hardest working president. That's what America deserves, not someone who hides from the press for whatever given reason.
Well, what about Biden's lid? 8 times in the month of September so far, just weeks before the election. Does the president, do the advisors, does the comms department think there's something going on with Biden, or is he just coasting?
Yeah, I can't get too far into Joe Biden because of Hatch Act reasons, but what I'd say is this, is there's really no starker contrast between a president who is, to me, the hardest working president really that we've seen in my lifetime, certainly. He's around the clock, doing public appearances. Look at his record. He always likes to say promises made, promises kept, and I've actually kept more promises than I even made, and that certainly is true at this point as we are now ushering in Middle East peace. Who would have thought?
It's true. I shouldn't have led you in that direction with the Hatch Act. That my fault. I apologize. Chris Wallace.
All good, Eric.
Chris Wallace is going to be the moderator of the first debate, and he's come out with some of the topics. Any of those concerning? Any of those look good to the president, to the administration?
Yeah, we're happy to speak on all of those topics, particularly law and order and security in our streets. It was extraordinary to read a New York Times article yesterday, in all places, the New York Times, that talked about the violence in Portland, actually, that just spilled into suburbs. And they talked about a black homeowner who had an American flag up, who became the target of violent protests. They were screaming, "We'll come, we'll burn down your house," all because he had an American flag. Americans deserve better in this country. They deserve law and order. They deserve to feel security. And it's good to know that that is at least going to be a topic that comes up, because the American people deserve to have a president who protects the well-being of their families.
Now, Kayleigh, I know it's your job to put it out there, put a positive spin on things, but let's be honest. So the president has been trailing in some important swing states. Now that gap is narrowing. We've had some recent polling this week that shows that gap narrowing, and him, President Trump, overtaking Joe Biden in some important states. But are there important states that you're worried about? For me, I've been talking about North Carolina for the better part of 2 months. Tell us about what the president sees as an important battleground state.
Well, the president routinely travels around the country. We've been in several different states this week. We believe the American people recognize his great accomplishments on the military, on the economy. It's a V-shaped recovery, a super V. As he said, we're rebounding quickly. We are, in fact, had the smallest contraction of any country, far smaller than Europe, because we have a president who's the jobs president. He brought us the hottest economy once, and he will do it again, which is why we're exceeding expectations. It was not predicted that we'd be in this low of unemployment by the end of the year, but now we're already in single digits, and it's only Q3. More work to be done, but we believe people across the country recognize that this president's the right man for the job and will bring back our economy.
All right, on a personal level, last question, Kayleigh. On a personal level, it's a hostile media. No question about it. I watch these press briefings every single time you hold one or the president shows up to one. It's a hostile. How do you handle this media personally? I know I have a lot of friends like, oh, she's tough, she's awesome, but some of the things that they do have to get to you. Just give us a sense of what it's like being in that briefing room.
Yeah, well, when you have truth on your side, it's a powerful weapon. Look, when I came into this job, I said I'm going to call out inaccurate reporting. Republican presidents are always the victim of unfair media reporting, fake news stories, and I am going to hold people accountable, call it out. I have a great team here to support me in that effort, and ultimately, I think it's important that the American people get the truth, which is why I often look in the briefings directly at the camera. This isn't about engaging with the reporter. It's about delivering truth to the American people. All right,
Kayleigh McEnany, thank you very much for your time. You're one of the most busy people in D.C. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Okay, let's bring in Senator Marco Rubio, the Republican from Florida. Senator, thank you for joining us on a very, very important week. Sir, let's talk a little bit about the process. The picking, the selecting of the nominee to replace Ruth Bader Ginsburg. As we all know, 4 years ago, everyone is up in arms. Don't replace in the last year of a presidential term. This time, both sides have switched. Give us your assessment of what should happen, what we should be seeing going forward.
Yeah, I want to take a couple of things right off the table. Number one, there's no legal issue here. There's no constitutional issue here, okay? The president's allowed to nominate whenever he wants up until the last day of his term, and the Senate is allowed to move on it whenever they want. So this is really a question of practice and what a Senate decides to do. So in 2016, a Democratic president nominated someone, for example, that I was not going to vote for. And in the system, the president has every right to nominate whoever they want. And my argument was, I'm not going to confirm someone for a president who is not even running for re-election, that has no accountability, especially someone that I'm not going to support anyway. And the Senate can decide how not to support a candidate. There's no law that says you have to give them a hearing. That was what the argument was about at the time. It wasn't even asking us to vote for Merrick Garland. They were saying, give him a hearing. There was no legal obligation to do it. The Senate has a right to not consent, and that includes the right to not give him a hearing. Now you fast forward to 2020. President Trump is on the ballot. Voters in November can reward him or punish him for whatever choice he makes. He's probably, the nominee is going to be, and someone that is a strict constructionalist, a conservative that understands the proper role of the Supreme Court. And in that particular case, we can decide to give our consent. And so there's no legal issue here. And there are differences between the two times. But ultimately, the bottom line is this. One of the reasons why I ran for the Senate is to be in a position to confirm people to the Supreme Court who have the proper view in my mind of what it means to be on the court. And if I have a chance to do it, I'm going to do it.
4 years ago, I was, whether or not you like Donald Trump, the candidate or not, or the person or not, pardon me, a conservative needed to vote for Donald Trump for this exact reason. He's already placed two. He's likely going to place the third Supreme Court justice. You give him another term, he might replace a fourth. Stephen Breyer's, getting very old as well. Here's the question. The Democrats have said, if you go ahead and confirm Trump's pick, going forward, if they win the House, if they win the Senate and they win the White House, they want to stack the court. They want to change the rules of the court. No longer 9 Supreme Court justices. They want to make it 11 or 13 or whatever they may end up doing. What are your thoughts on them? Now, granted, they need the filibuster. They need to get that filibuster ruling changed back before Harry Reid days. But what are your thoughts on what they want, the games they want to play if that additional Supreme Court justice gets placed by Trump?
I think they're going to try to do it anyway. And they've been saying it for a long time. About 6 months ago, I filed a constitutional amendment that holds the number at 9. Because they've already been talking about it. So in essence, they are threatening to do what they've already threatened to do. And they're threatening to do what they're going to try to do if they take the majority anyways. So in my mind, it's a non-factor, that threat. In fact, I tell people all the time, if Joe Biden is elected president and they take the Senate, this is not just going to be a change in government. It's going to be a radical change in direction, because even though Joe Biden is a long-time sort of traditional insider in Washington politics, everybody in his administration, starting with his running mate, all the people he's going to have to appoint are going to be people far left of center. That's where all the energy is in the Democratic Party. That's where all the money's coming from the Democratic Party. That's the direction he'll be pushed. You've already had to see him make accommodations to that, even to get the nomination. So this is not just going to be a change of government. It's going to be a radical change in direction. And I think people need to know that that's what's on the ballot.
And if they do that, it will be because it's not in the Constitution that you cannot increase the number of Supreme Court justices. It would seem to be that you could end up down the road years forward with 24, 25, 33 justices. The game would just get uglier and uglier. It would just completely undermine the reason for the Supreme Court. Hopefully the American people understand that. Sir, this week the Senate investigation panel released a report on Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden, and his relationship with Burisma. Is there anything you could add to that? Tell our audience what you found.
Well, I think that's from Homeland Security, so I haven't had a chance to read through it again. Obviously, they've taken on that task. As the acting chairman of the Intelligence Committee, I inherited, although we were part of it as a member, a report on 2016 in general. And the one thing we did find there, and we've said this pretty repeatedly now, is in my view, there was foreign interference in the 2016 election, and the most effective, most widespread, the biggest example of it was this dossier. It was a dossier prepared by a foreigner, relying on foreign sources that every intelligence agency told the FBI not to rely on and not to use, and they decided to use it anyway. In essence, the Clinton campaign went out and hired someone to dig up dirt, whether it was true or not about Donald Trump. They actually shopped it to the media in October of that year. The media wouldn't run with it. And then the FBI took this, despite being told by the CIA and everybody else, don't use it, it's not reliable. They used it in court filings to get FISA warrants. And it's an outrage. That can't ever happen again. And that, to me, was the biggest piece of foreign interference in 2016.
Senator, I only have about 30 seconds. Some other news this week. One of your fellow GOP senators, the late John McCain's wife, Cindy McCain, has said she's coming out and she's endorsing Joe Biden for president in campaigning for him. One final thought on that. I know you and McCain knew each other very well. Your thoughts on John McCain's widow supporting Joe Biden?
Well, look, I mean, obviously she has a right to support whomever she wants in any campaign. She's an American. She has that choice to make. And I respect her choice. Obviously, I don't agree with it. I'm going to vote for somebody different that she's going to vote for in Arizona. I have nothing negative to say about that. Everybody, look, this is an election. People are going to get to choose. And that's what makes our country unique and different, is that we have a right to choose our leaders here. And every American will have to make that choice for themselves. But I have a suggestion, and that is that they vote for Donald Trump, and I hope that more people agree with that than not.
Senator Marco Rubio, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Okay, let's bring in Republican Congressman, by the way, from Florida, because my first question is all about Florida, Matt Gaetz, who also has the book Firebrand just out. Matt, Bloomberg has said he's going to spend $100 million getting Florida for Joe Biden. What does Congressman from Florida, Matt Gaetz, say about that?
President Trump is doing very well in Florida, and there's no amount of Michael Bloomberg money that can make Joe Biden a more compelling candidate. He's particularly uncompelling to a lot of the Hispanic voters who have increasingly become turned off by the neo-Marxist, anti-American, Black Lives Matter fringe elements and organizational elements, I should perhaps say. In Florida, we also see just a rising number of NPAs who are perhaps a little bit older, who've moved to Florida from a blue state, and they like that low taxes and that friendly regulatory climate and safe streets. And those are the types of policies our governor implements, and that seems to be helping the president there as well. Now, Michael Bloomberg has also decided that he's going to pay off some of the restitution and court costs and fines for ex-felons to restore their voting rights, but it won't be for all ex-felons. They've specifically identified Black, Latino, and those ex-felons with a particular voting record, voting history, and propensity. So it seems to be a direct political ploy to bribe people for their votes by extinguishing their debts.
You know, Matt, in 2016, actually, in almost every presidential election, Florida is so integral. Both sides need it. If Trump doesn't win Florida, he's going to have a tough time. I don't even see a path to the presidency if he doesn't win Florida. He is winning. He's leading. Interesting, though, the state of Florida is very interesting. South Florida has one personality. North Florida has another, the Panhandle another. That I-4 corridor is where the elections are won and lost. Presidential elections are won and lost in the I-4 corridor from Tampa through Orlando down to Daytona Beach. Your thoughts on how this plays out in the corridor?
Well, we have had unified Republican control of the government in Florida for an entire political generation, and that has shown people what these policies that embrace prosperity can do to improve quality of life. The area you described, the I-4 corridor, has grown a great deal over the last 4 years. A lot of new residents that have moved in that, you know, bring their hopes and dreams to the Sunshine State. It's the story of the wonderful place that I'm from. But I would also suggest, Eric, keep an eye on Miami-Dade County. All of the field data that we're getting, all of the polling data we're getting, suggesting that these Hispanics that might only be one or generation removed from socialism in Central or South America are not signing up for the Biden-Harris candidacy. And so if Joe Biden is unable to build margins in South Florida because he can't win Hispanic voters, I think it's going to be easier for my good folks in the Florida Panhandle to deliver victory. You know, down in South Florida, they got the country clubs. Up in North Florida, we got the hunting clubs, and that's where we elect presidents.
And Matt, what matters here is so Cubans typically vote for conservatives. That's just the way they typically vote. Now, what about non-Cuban Hispanics in the state of Florida? Because this, again, Florida is so important. Where are they voting? Where are they falling? This, some would say in the I-4 corridor, there's a lot of non-Cuban Hispanics moving to the Orlando area, Central Florida area, and they may not be friends of Trump.
Well, you'll recall that in the 2018 election, 8.5 million people voted in the state of Florida. Ron DeSantis won by about 30,000 votes, Rick Scott by about 10,000 votes. There are 300,000 Venezuelans in the state of Florida who have registered to vote, or folks that identify with that particular heritage. And so we've got an opportunity with that voting base to really make the case effectively against socialism, and we're doing well in that regard. But what we're finding also is that there are certain themes with kind of the pan-Latin community in Florida that are very pro-family, pro-small business, that have benefited from an education system in Florida that embraces school choice rather than just making education a government-run monopoly. And so those policies are starting to animate more of a generational support for Republicans. And Ron DeSantis won the Hispanic vote. I suspect that President Trump will do very, very well in that category. And it's going to be beyond just those of Cuban descent. I think that growing number of Venezuelans is a real honey hole for Republicans.
All right, we're going to leave you there. Matt Gaetz, the book is called Firebrand, Dispatches from the Front Lines of the MAGA Revolution. My friends, viewers, look at that man. He is on the front lines. And yes, he is a firebrand. Good friend, Matt Gaetz, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Eric.
My next guest just released the new book, Supreme Disorder, Judicial Nominations and the Politics of America's Highest Court. And the timing couldn't be more perfect. Ilya Shapiro is the Director for Constitutional Studies at the Cato Institute. Thank you for being here, Ilya. So, your book is so important, especially the second part of the Politics of America's Highest Court. It's supposed to be non-political, is it not?
Actually, no. The Constitution is silent beyond saying that the president shall nominate and with the advice and consent of the Senate shall appoint. But their politics has been a part of the process since the very beginning. George Washington had a nominee rejected, for example. Most presidents, or at least half or more, have had troubles of various kinds. The way politics has played a role has certainly been different. But look, the Senate and the presidency are both political bodies. And so quite apart from what the justices do once they're up there, the process of getting them there is inherently political.
And so let's talk about what the Democrats are now saying that they're going to do if President Trump's nomination goes through. They're going to stack the court if they win the Senate and the presidency. Is it as easy as they claim it is?
It would only take an act of Congress. This is not something that the number of justices is not in the Constitution, and we've had as few as 5 and as many as 10. It's been 9 now for 150 years, so I guess you could say that that's a norm. The last time something like this was tried was FDR in 1937, and that was hugely unpopular. That even after FDR was reelected overwhelmingly in 1936 at the midterms, the Democrats lost 80 seats in the House and 8 in the Senate. But what it would take would be eliminating the legislative filibuster, which still exists in the Senate. You need 60 to move to a final vote on legislation, and then pass that legislation, adding however many seats they want to add.
And so, let's play this out. And then the next time the Republicans hold a Senate and a White House, they can add 2 more, swing the court back, or add 4 more, whatever they want to do. Basically, you dilute the effectiveness of the court, do you not?
This is why I agree with Bernie Sanders, possibly the only thing I've ever found to agree with him on. When he was asked about court packing, because most of those running in the Democratic primary for president wanted to restructure the court in some ways, Sanders did not. He said, look, exactly what you said. Well, the next time the Republicans in power, they'll add more and so forth. In 50 years, I'm not going to do the accent, but we'll have 87 justices. It's crazy. And for that matter, Joe Biden as well did not. Those were the 2 finalists, Sanders and Biden did not agree to court packing either, although now it might be forced on him and the pressure from the base might be unstoppable.
Okay, so the elections have consequences. Republicans have the Senate, they have the White House, and they'll likely get their push. Trump will get his nominee through. There's a lot of fearful people. They approach me. Is Roe v. Wade at risk with a conservative court?
I doubt it. I mean, not with this court. I count 1, maybe 2 votes currently. Even if you add the new person, that would only be 3. I mean, there will be differences at the margin. So there was an abortion case this past term where famously John Roberts switched sides as a matter of preserving precedent and invalidated a regulation. So there will be regulations and restrictions that otherwise would have been struck down that now are going to be upheld. But Roe and Planned Parenthood versus Casey, which is actually the governing precedent on abortion, I don't think they're in any danger.
And that would likely, and the states continue to try and have try the Roe v. Wade issue at the state level, not at the Supreme Court level, right?
That's right. And for that matter, I should say, if in some future time Roe v. Wade is overturned, all that would do is return the issue to the states. So those states with the highest concentration of pro-choice voters would, I mean, nothing would change there. Maybe in half a dozen states, there might be severe restrictions, but, you know, it would just make this a federalism issue like a lot of things should be. And in fact, a great part of the reason why we have these cataclysmic battles over Supreme Court seats is because so much of our policy has been centralized in Washington, has been federalized. In Washington, it's been all thrown into the courts rather than being decided by Congress. And so, of course, these battles over the finite number of seats are going to be fraught when you have divergent interpretive theories mapping onto partisan preferences at a time when the parties are so ideologically separated.
Ilya Shapiro, we appreciate your time. Always great having you on. Thank you.
Thanks. Supreme Disorder came out yesterday. Great timing.
Supreme Disorder, judicial nominations, and the politics of America's highest court. I love it. Good timing, sir. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
Coming up on America This Week, I'm talking with the co-founder of the Greater New York chapter of Black Lives Matter, Hawk Newsome. And our offer to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris still stands. We've reached out week after week to try and get them or a representative on the show. So far, crickets. Our message remains the same. We'll do whatever it takes to make it happen in this important election year. Our viewers across Sinclair's 191 markets deserve to hear from one of you.
America, one nation, from Florida to St. Louis to Seattle. America This Week, America's fastest growing political show, delivers facts, not falsehoods.
Well, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and I appreciate the opportunity to clear some of it up.
Hard-edged opinions.
We can no longer rely on China to be the primary producer of so many critical products that we need in a time of crisis.
Tough topic debates.
Has the mainstream media vetted Joe Biden the way they vetted others on the right?
I just believe that all women have the right to speak their truth and that those truths should also be investigated. The end, regardless of what political party they are a part of.
America This Week reveals the topics and issues that pulse throughout America. Fighting COVID-19.
We're working with every single state to be able to detect outbreaks before they spread into the community.
And the path forward.
Getting back to some degree of normality, that will come. We will get over this.
America This Week investigates chaos at the southern border.
Go, 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 go.
The poisoning of America.
It's in the soils, it's in the water, and it's in our blood.
Toxic chemicals linked to multiple cancers found in towns across America.
We were poisoned, and we are still poisoned.
Almost every day, there is a new community that is finding out that their water is contaminated.
America This Week relentlessly seeks the truth on your behalf.
I'm Eric Bolling. Join me for a fascinating look at America This Week. Let's get right to the interview segment. Hawk Newsome is the co-founder for the Greater New York chapter of Black Lives Matter. Hawk, you guys are killing me. You're crushing me. I'm out here all summer long defending Black Lives Matter's right to protest peacefully, and it's right, and it's constitutional. And then I got these videos of people in Black Lives Matter chanting death to cops, death to Trump supporters. You know, come on, man. What is it? Is Black Lives Matter a peaceful protest organic group, or is it, as a lot of people would say, you know, similar to an Antifa group?
Well, we have to be we have to just be gentlemen about this, right? And at the core of that, we have to be honest men about this, right? 95% of the protests since George Floyd have been peaceful. There has been some serious unrest in about 5% of those. And that's kind of to be expected when you have a bunch of people who are consistently murdered and oppressed, and people are kind of sitting at home watching this. So you have folks who are not just Black Lives Matter activists. I believe a corporate lawyer, right, who was not a black person who was arrested for damaging a police car. So, you know, while folks are out here, and I appreciate you defending Black Lives Matter, we have to turn and look at this from a different perspective when you see people standing in pro-Trump crowds throwing Hail Hitler signs. That's posted on my Instagram page. You have to look at people who use the N-word when they're counter-protesting Black Lives Matter groups. So you have to look at those Trump supporters. You have to look at those conservatives as well.
I'll be consistent here. Those are all disgusting examples that you point out, yet they're protected free speech. The line gets drawn when a rock goes through a window, or a car gets kicked in, or someone is assaulted, kicked on the street, because, and you'll, not you, there'll be those who say that's justified, but it's never justified. What's justified is what's legal. What's legal is what comes out of your mouth, not what comes out of your hand as a projectile.
Well, my friend, Jim Crow was legal for a very long time, wasn't it? Segregation, slavery was legal. Laws are all good until people like us take to the streets and protest and change them, until people like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. take to the streets and change them. We have to truly be agents of change. We have to be visionary. Instead of folks focusing on the protesters and painting this ugly picture to make particularly white women and people across America scared of Black Lives Matter, let's look to the core of the issue. Let's look to people systemically being killed by cops. You have a current administration who said that criminal justice reform was necessary. You had a previous Democratic cabinet, and they said the same thing. We don't believe in reform. We believe that the system needs to be rebuilt from the bottom up.
Let me do this. You only have a minute or so, Hawk, and I hate to do this because it's so important. Breonna Taylor was killed in Kentucky, awful, murdered. One of the police officers has been indicted on criminal charges. What are your thoughts on that? Just keep it within a minute if you don't mind.
I'll be perfectly honest with you, my friend. If Breonna Taylor was a white woman of similar circumstance, that officer would have been charged with criminally negligent homicide, and the other officers would have been charged. We run around this country as selfish as we could possibly be. In the name of God, we should put ourselves in the other person's shoes and really say, how would I feel if that was my aunt or my cousin that these atrocious things happen to? It's time for us to stop being selfish, stop being led astray by the media and the politicians, both on the left and the right. It's time for real Americans, people of good conscience, to step to the forefront and take control of our country and steal it back from these corporations and the politicians that they bought and paid for.
And on that note, Hawk Newsome and Eric Bolling will agree 100%. Hawk, thank you for joining us. Ahead in America This Week, to fill the seat or not to fill the seat, you don't want to miss the debate between Dr. Sebastian Gorka and Amisha Cross. Each week, I've been taking you to the front lines of the fight against the opioid epidemic, where tough men and women and canines are working to stop millions of dollars of illegal drugs from entering our borders. I've witnessed bricks of cocaine worth hundreds of millions of dollars being seized from drug cartels, drugs hidden inside vehicles that cross the southern border, and pills being sent by criminals through the mail. It seems like no matter what we do, it's never enough to eradicate this deadly plague and keep it off our streets. But you can help in this fight by donating to the Eric Chase Foundation, ericchasefoundation.org. Every dollar helps parents and their kids and hopefully prevents a devastating overdose. With your help, we can save lives. Thanks to everyone who's donated so far. Remember, each week, my top donors will get a signed copy of my book, Wake Up America.
United we stand, we never fall. This perilous fight, it takes one and all. Everyone stands, American strong. Strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time.
We stand, America.
United we stand.
We stand, America.
United we stand. Ready to help, ready to serve. It takes everyone with steady nerves. Everyone stands, American strong. Strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time.
We stand, America.
United we stand.
We stand, America strong.
City by city, state by state, town by town, stand American great. Everyone stands American strong. When strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time.
We stand, America.
United we stand.
We stand, America strong.
United we stand.
I want you to use my words against me. If there's a Republican president in 2016 and a vacancy occurs in the last year of the first term, you can say, Lindsey Graham said, let's let the next president, whoever it might be, make that nomination. And you could use my words against me, and you'd be absolutely right.
Senator Lindsey Graham back in 2016, now singing a very different tune when it comes to a Supreme Court nomination weeks before Election Day. But he's not the only one flip-flopping. Let's hear from both sides of the aisle. Here's Sinclair political commentator Amisha Cross and member of the President's National Security Education Board, host of America First on Salem Radio and Sinclair Media contributor, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. Seb, it's a swamp. It's a swamp. They forget what they said a couple years ago. Your thoughts?
Look, we look at the precedents. We should respect Ruth Bader Ginsburg's actual statements. Forget about these spurious deathbed wishes. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I played the video on my show yesterday, said a president is president for 4 years, not 3. In the last year before an election, he doesn't magically lose his powers to nominate a Supreme Court justice. That's her analysis as a Supreme Court Associate Justice. Also, when it comes to various flip-flops, there's a senator, former senator from Illinois, oh yes, Barack Obama, who said elections have consequences. Well, guess what? The Senate is now a Republican Senate. The White House is a Republican White House. That reflects the will of the American people, not listening to those who lost the election and the midterms. So let's go with the will of the people, Eric.
All right, Sebastian, but Amisha, before we go to you, I played that soundbite from Ruth Bader Ginsburg in 2016 when she said, 4-year terms, not 3-year terms. Let's take a listen, control room. Let's roll Pelosi back in 2016.
Republicans are leaving Washington without having completed any of the urgent business before Congress. Also, the fair hearing and prompt vote owed President Obama's Supreme Court nominee.
Amisha, both sides are at it.
You're absolutely right. And this is one of those rare moments where I will agree with Sebastian Gorka here. Elections do have consequences. And I think that this is a very hyper-polarized situation, considering everything that Ruth Bader Ginsburg stood for and everything that is at risk with some of the nominees that we've currently heard that Donald Trump and the Republicans want to see put forth. But I do think that, this is winner takes the spoils. The Republicans have the Senate. Democrats had basically a last-ditch effort in hoping that at least 4 Republican senators senators would, stop this vote. But I don't think that, that quickly evaded yesterday. But I do think that moving forward, Democrats still do have certain options. Looking forward, it would depend heavily on winning the presidency, but also winning the Senate. Democrats could expand the court. Democrats could push for and realize the hopes of Puerto Rico as well as DC and becoming states, and they could also fight to end the filibuster. But aside from those things, I don't think that there's any real option now in terms of holding on to or trying to make sure that the Supreme Court seat doesn't have the impact of the tilt of the court that Democrats are trying to fight against.
Sebastian, what do you say to Democrats who say, look, if we get it's going to be our ball if we win the presidency and the Senate, we'll flip-flop back to the filibuster rule prior to Harry Reid? What do you say to them who say we're going to stack the court and or add Senate seats to D.C. or Puerto Rico or Guam or wherever the heck else they want to do it?
I wouldn't say anything to them, Eric. I'd ask the American people, what is the motivation for any of that? What is the motivation of adding 2 new states to our republic? States, let's look at them, that vote exclusively Democrat. D.C. voted 92% for Hillary Clinton. There's only one reason why they don't want to have the nominee chosen now. There's only one reason why they want to pack the Supreme Court and why they want those 2 states added to the republic, because they want to rule in perpetuity, because they can't win fair elections. They know that Puerto Rico and Washington would give them 4 additional Democrat senators, and then they're locked in. It is anti-democratic, which is ironic, Eric, given the name of their party.
All right, let me give you final thought. It just seems like, I don't know, the Democrats want to change the rules. They want to stack the court just because they lost. It seems like a little bit crybaby tactics.
Well, Republicans fought very hard to not bring Merrick Garland up for a vote during President Obama's almost a year out of making sure that he was able to get that Supreme Court seat. And now we're less than 2 months out, and we're seeing Republicans go all hells bells in to make sure that they get their nominee. So I think there's a little bit of angst on both sides and a lot of politicking happening. But again, winner takes the spoils. And I think that right now we're in an interesting place where it is honestly in the Republicans' court.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Thank you very much, Amisha and Sebastian. Always good to have you both on.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
Every week we honor first responders who died in the line of duty protecting our great country. Sergeant Alvin Sugrañez Lebron with the Puerto Rico Department of Corrections was shot and killed last week. The suspect was a disgruntled corrections officer from another facility. Sergeant Sugrañez Lebron leaves behind his wife and child. Ranger Brendan Unit with the Larimer County Department of Natural Resources in Colorado drowned while trying to save a boater last month. Ranger Unit was a Marine Corps veteran and was with the DNR for 6 months. Rest in peace, officers.
America, one nation, from Florida to St. Louis to Seattle. America This Week, America's fastest growing political show, delivers facts, not falsehoods.
Well, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and I appreciate the opportunity to clear some of it up.
Hard-edged opinions.
We can no longer rely on China to be the primary producer of so many critical products that we need in a time of crisis.
Tough topic debates.
Has the mainstream media vetted Joe Biden the way they vetted others on the right?
I just believe that all women have the right to speak their truth and that those truths should also be investigated. The end, regardless of what political party they are a part of.
America This Week reveals the topics and issues that pulse throughout America. Fighting COVID-19.
We're working with every single state to be able to detect outbreaks before they spread into the community.
And the path forward.
Getting back to some degree of normality, that will come. We will get over this.
America This Week investigates chaos at the southern border.
Go, 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 go.
The poisoning of America.
It's in the soils, it's in the water, and it's in our blood.
Toxic chemicals linked to multiple cancers found in towns across America.
We were poisoned, and we are still poisoned.
Almost every day, there is a new community that is finding out that their water is contaminated.
America This Week, relentlessly seeks the truth on your behalf.
I'm Eric Bolling. Join me for a fascinating look at America this week. Let's bring in Tom Fitton. He's the president of Judicial Watch. Tom, you know, a lot going on. We have a Supreme Court replacement going on. We have an election going on. We got deep state. We got Hunter Biden. We got Ilhan Omar. There is so much angst in America right now. What do you think is going to happen if Donald Trump does get to place his nominee?
Oh, I think the left will be angry, but of course they're perpetually angry these days. It's absurd to suggest, Eric, that a Senate and a presidency controlled by the same party, that they would jointly decline to fill an open Supreme Court slot. It's going to happen. It's going to happen before the election, barring some radical intervention from above. And we're going to have a much more significant conservative contingent on the Supreme Court as a result. And so the people that put the Senate into power, the Republicans in control of the Senate, and the president into the presidency are going to be excited.
You know, so I talked about this earlier in the monologue, that it's happened 7 times where a president in his last term, who also held the Senate, same party holding the Senate, placed the nominee. And 6 out of the 7 times it happened, only once it didn't happen because of an ethics violation. But that is the precedent. It's also constitutional. Tom, give us, because you're the constitutionalist, tell us how the Democrats have threatened to change the makeup of the court, adding seats to the court, or adding statehood for D.C., Puerto Rico, and others. What's the process? Is it as easy as they're making it out to be, like, if we win the Senate and the presidency, we're going to make these changes?
Well, politically, it may not be easy. In terms of adding to the court, the Supreme Court, that would be an attack on the constitutional system we have in place, an attack on the third branch of government. Turning the Supreme Court into the Democratic National Committee, I think, would be a big negative because, as folks like Joe Biden has pointed out and others, look, you know, what happens? The Democrats add seats that they fill, and that's followed by the Republicans.
Can they do it, Tom? Can they do it, though? Constitutionally, can they do it?
Yeah, they can. I think they can do it legislatively, and it's only a statute. It's only a statute that sets the 9-member number for the Supreme Court. Of course, it hasn't been changed since, I think, the Civil War. So the last time someone attempted to change it was Franklin Roosevelt. Now we're still talking about it. If you hear about Franklin Roosevelt, court packing other than World War II is something you're often hearing about.
But talk to us very quickly, only about a minute. So the filibuster rule. Tell us why this is coming into play with the Supreme Court now.
Well, there used to be the opportunity to filibuster Supreme Court nominees. Barack Obama filibustered Alito, for instance. And Harry Reid, in order to help Barack Obama, eliminated the filibuster rule for Supreme Court nominees, which helped people like Elena Kagan and Sonia Sotomayor to get on the court. Now they're regretting it. So what is the response from the left? Let's eliminate the filibuster for legislation as well. So that's their thinking, so that they can get the court packing scheme through if they win in the Senate and the House and get the presidency. And they can get all their wish lists through without having to have their legislation shut down by the filibuster of Republicans. Now they're threatening this. Whether it happens or not, I don't know, because there are some Democrats that want to keep the filibuster because they know that sometimes they're in the minority too, and they want to have that provision in place to protect their interests.
You know, and we're going to leave it there, but they must have a lot of confidence about the upcoming election to be talking about this right now, because after all, you still got to win the presidency and you still got to take the Senate, and they're down by 3 at least right now. Tom Fitton, Judicial Watch, thank you again for your time.
You're welcome.
United we stand, we never fall. This perilous fight, it takes one and all. Everyone stands, American strong. Strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time.
We stand America.
United we stand.
We stand America.
United we stand. Ready to help, ready to serve. It takes everyone with steady nerves. Everyone stands, American strong. Strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time.
We stand America.
United we stand.
We stand America strong.
City by city, state by state, town by town, stand American great. Everyone stands American strong. When strength by one equals strength by all. American values, American pride. Your neighbor needs you, each person, each time.
We stand America.
United we stand.
We stand America.
United we stand.
You can watch America This Week wherever you are and wherever you go. Just download the Stir app to your smartphone, Roku, Apple TV, and other devices, and start getting 100% free TV. America This Week airs every Sunday at 9 a.m. and again at midnight on your local Stir City channel. That's Channel 1. That puts every show at your fingertips. Again, 100% free. This week, the country has mourned the loss of a giant, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She was a pioneer for gender equality long before she was appointed to the Supreme Court in 1993. There, she formed what seemed to many an unlikely friendship with Justice Antonin Scalia. They were the odd couple in Washington, but their love and respect for one another was genuine. Justice Scalia died in 2016, and RBG spoke at his funeral. Tonight, we leave you with what might have been perhaps the most poignant and humorous part of your eulogy.
Among my favorite Scalia stories, when President Clinton was mulling over his first nomination to the Supreme Court, Justice Scalia was asked, if you were stranded on a desert island with your new court colleague, who would you prefer, Larry Tribe or Mario Cuomo? Justice Scalia answered quickly and distinctly, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And within days, the president chose me. Among Justice Scalia's many talents, he was a discerning shopper. In Agra together in 1994, our driver took us to his friend's carpet shop. One rug after another was tossed onto the floor, leaving me without a clue which to choose. Nino pointed to one he thought Maureen would like for their beach house in North Carolina.
Okay, let's bring in the White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany. Kayleigh, 5 months into the new gig, and you've had your hands full. Let's start some of the news of the week. Shocking to me, shocking. Cindy McCain, John McCain's widow, came out in favor of Joe Biden. What does the president think when he hears something like that?
Well, look, if you're advocating for our veterans, for our military heroes, there's a very clear contrast. No one wants to go back to the disastrous Obama days, where under Obama-Biden, our Air Force was the smallest it had been. Our Navy was the smallest it had been. Take that and compare that to President Trump, who invested a record amount of money in our military, got our troops a pay raise, and then tragically, look at what happened to our veterans. Under Obama-Biden, you have up to 300,000 veterans who died as they had applications pending. That was in an Inspector General report, a real tragedy. Think of that number, 300,000. That's extraordinary. And then you have a president who came in and cleaned up the Obama-Biden mess and fixed the VA and gave access to health care to millions of veterans who needed it.
Kayleigh, tell us